Welcome, everybody. Lovely to see so many people, and I think we're around 300 people online also, so it seems that this is really an interesting topic. So I'm Cecilia Bonefeld from Digital Europe, the Director General. First of all, I mean, it's quite amazing to see that we have all four parties here. We have Svenja Hahn from the Liberals, we have Sergey Lagodinsky, I don't know if I say that correctly, but we from the Green, and of course we have Petra Vitanov from S&D, and Eva Meidel. Eva just arrived from the rapporteur from the EPP. Thank you also to my great colleagues, Annabelle from COSIR and MedTech Europe and Sesamo for standing together as industries and also trying to bring the concrete cases and know how this works in practice out there. I started my journey on this AI file actually in the high-level group for artificial intelligence with the Commission 6 years ago, where we did the pyramid with the different risk levels. Now it's crunch time, which are the things that we want at the top and the bottom, and which is high risk and not. So it has come a long way, but what we do today will really matter for the future. So thank you everybody for coming. And with that, let me turn to the first speaker. And with that, Svenja, Hahn, please, the word is yours.
Thank you very much for the very warm welcome. And thank you everyone for joining us here in the room, joining us online. I must say I'm very impressed by the numbers that you're showing up. And I think it just underlines how crucial the AI Act is for Europe, that European legislation is getting this much attention, that it's getting this much interest. Thank you for the very kind introduction. So my name is Svenja Hahn. I'm a member of the European Parliament, and I'm from the group Renew Europe. I'm negotiating for our group in the Single Market Committee. And if you're here today, I think then you have heard about the AI Act before, and you're very well aware that we're entering a hot phase right now in the negotiations. And I think you already mentioned it. I think it's a strong signal that we have negotiators here from all four democratic groups, that we're co-hosting this event together, because I think that reflects one thing very, very well. I mean, we all have political differences. We all have different priorities while negotiating this law, but I think we all share one goal, that we want to ensure that AI in Europe, in the European Union, is working in a trustworthy, in a human-centric way, that we are able to foster innovation made in Europe, and that also we protect our citizens' fundamental rights. And I think all of us have met many stakeholders. Actually, I see a few familiar faces with which I met before here as well, with many different backgrounds, because the interest in this legislation is coming from all different sides, because we're all going to be affected by this legislation. So I think today's event is really important for us as legislators, because you often see us speaking in panels and talking and explaining what we're doing. But I fundamentally believe a large part of our job is actually listening and understanding how legislation, how the work we are doing is impacting the lives, the work of citizens, of organizations. So for me, this is also a really great listening exercise, bringing together those negotiating the laws, those that massively will be affected, and those that bring the expertise from their everyday life. So also a warm welcome from me to all the representatives of all the organizations involved in this planning. I just heard from one of the organizers, you've been planning this since like January. So really kudos for putting all the effort in. Really warm welcome from my side. I really hope to be learning something new today. And I really hope that we're able to deliver together for, well, the citizens of Europe and our economy. So thank you very much. And I think I can hand over to Petra now.
Thank you. Thank you, Svenja. And thank you all for being here. It's really a pleasure, because indeed, I was just speaking with some of our colleagues a couple of minutes ago that sometimes we are discussing too theoretically all those issues linked with the artificial intelligence. It's so good to have here people from the real sector. But generally, I'm also eager to have this discussion, the critical topic of AI technologies in Europe. Artificial intelligence generally holds immense potential, but it's crucial to approach this technology with a keen awareness of its implications, especially when it comes to potential discrimination and bias. In our rapidly changing world, there is no doubt that AI has the power to revolutionize industries, drive economic growth, and enhance our daily lives. It supports us with innovative solutions to complex problems and offers a path forward on some of the most pressing challenges that we are having, so in healthcare, in environmental sustainability or transportation. However, one of the most significant concerns that we are having is the potential for AI systems to perpetuate existing biases. If not carefully designed and regulated, AI algorithms can discriminate against certain groups or reinforce prejudice practices. For instance, in sectors like social and employment policies, law enforcement, and criminal justice, the data used to train the AI models may contain historical bias. Without appropriate safeguards, AI systems can make decisions that unfairly disadvantage marginalized communities, and this is not basically the future that we all want. Transparency, fairness, accountability must be the forefront of all our AI initiatives. And we need robust mechanisms to detect and avoid bias in AI systems, and we must ensure that the development process is inclusive and representative of all diverse perspectives. Moreover, data privacy and security are definitely paramount. The responsible collection and use of personal data in AI applications should be subject to strict regulations to safeguard individual rights and prevent abuse. And in conclusion, of course, my focus is not solely on mistrust, but on the imperative to address the potential for discrimination in AI technologies. We have the opportunity to shape the future of AI in Europe in a way that upholds our values, promotes fairness, and empowers all members of society. Let us engage in thoughtful and constructive discussions to set the scene for AI technologies in Europe, ensuring that they serve the greater good and uphold ethical standards. And thank you once again for being here. It will be a great pleasure.
Thank you so much. And we actually have a third gentleman. So Sergey is online, I understand, with a video statement. I think he's in Japan, actually. I don't know if he is actually visiting speaking about how to do harmonized standards on AI, but we did have for, I think, like 7 years now, talks with Japan on key enabling technologies and standardization and Yes, we're working on it, right? Should I spend the time a bit?
Dear colleagues, dear guests, thank you for joining us today in the European Parliament. My name is Sergey Lagodinsky. I'm one of the hosts of the conference, and I am the Greens EFA Shadow Rapporteur for AI Act in the LIBE and the jury committees. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in Brussels today, as I am currently participating in the official delegation mission of the European Parliament to the Internet Governance Forum in Japan. I'm meeting there with experts working on AI policy around the globe that are looking to Europe's upcoming regulation. Europe's approach to AI regulation, from the first initiative reports and white papers until today, was conceived as an exercise in building trust. Artificial intelligence and the different technologies behind it are one of the most interesting, exciting fields in innovation and research today. As such, it is still evolving rapidly and often in ways that are not easily foreseen for us, policymakers. People and businesses look critically at it and are still in the process of evaluating Will AI threaten the quality of our education? Will it mean more surveillance or more discrimination at my place or at work? Will the expensive AI system bring the improvements it promised for my business or not? Will my customers complain about a service provided with AI enhancement? Who is responsible if the machine fails? In particular for foundational and citizens' rights, the first European or even worldwide regulation of artificial intelligence must answer these questions. Trust must be earned. The AI Act should help AI producers and AI deployers earn this trust. That is why the Parliament has agreed to build on the Commission's high-risk approach and agreed to primarily provide guardrails for AI systems, and in particular, where they pose a high risk to the health and safety of persons, to fundamental rights, and the environment. I hope that you will have a great, enriching conference.
So thank you so much. With that, I would like to thank you so much for these input. I think there was a few things just to reflect on, the biases being one of them. Of course, bias exists every day in everybody's life. We are all biased, some more than others. And we have to remember that this new thing with the AI is that it can be done at a much larger scale. However, I would say it doesn't also have the potential of doing less bias if we actually use the tool correctly. We all remember the story of an automobile. When the automobile came, there was a legislation that somebody had to walk in front of the car with the flags shouting, "There is an automobile, there is an automobile," because they feared that the machine might go crazy, run wild, and kill everybody around them. So they quickly found out that it was not very smart, and everybody needed an automobile. So they needed to make even better rules. So how do we balance that? How do we make sure that we don't make a law where we need to go in front and shout, "There is an automobile, there is an automobile," but that we actually get the benefits of the automobiles into our society? I hear a lot, personally, I come from the private sector, I hear a lot of fear. It's so easy to say we fear, right? Then everybody can gather around a fear. But how do we lead? If we want European values, we need European companies, we need best of the state-of-the-art technologies in Europe to actually implement that and to carry those values. So how do we make sure that we let also AI scale and companies to develop the cutting-edge technology that can detect breast cancer or fight biases or detect cybersecurity risks, or just go in and actually write codes, innovative codes, faster than competitors around the world? With that, I would like to thank you guys so much. Say, let's balance the risk with actually the innovation, and please give the three MEPs a hand. And may I please welcome the rapporteur and I would say the Grand Lady of Digital Policy, Eva Maydell, on stage, and of course Cedric O, who you might know as the former State Secretary of Digital for France. Two people that for sure has been a part of this journey. And I'm just going to go up and say hello. Hi, Eva. Thank you so much for having us. So I would say it's an honor to be able to facilitate a chat with Eva and with Cedric on the future of AI regulation. And I guess we can say it's crunch time, no? It's like the last hours of this file. We're discussing just a little bit, maybe on intro. We've been using in industry and in private sector, we've been using AI for the last 25 years, so it's nothing really new. So we have quite a lot of experience with using AI, and just to say, we need to also build on those. What is AI? When you have an automated system in industry, is that an AI? No, automated systems are not AI. They are just automating something that has already been done 100 million times before, and we found smarter ways to do so. When is AI? When it starts learning and developing on top of other and experiences. But let's, split automated applications and AI. So some of these discussions are now happening. Then also the risk categorization. We did a study called AI sandboxing. Many of the SMEs that we interviewed said, but we are not in high risk. And we said, right now you are. They said, no, but we're not at all. So where do we actually gather that experience, and how do we make sure that we continuously learn about what is high risk and not high risk? We discussed just before also the emotional detection. Honestly, if I'm in a plane and the pilot is falling asleep, I would like some kind of emotional detection to wake him up. So where are the safety cases where we actually need, for example, something like this to make sure that people stay safe? Are there actually cases of that? It is a very hard line to draw, and I think we'll have to work with it continuously. With that, let me welcome the rapporteur of the file. You have been leading the battle all the way from the start to the end. And to Sergey, you have also been one of the, I would say, the first to discuss exactly the AI file, and now on the other side, in one of the European AI companies. So let me start by asking, where does the file stand right now, Eva? And are we in? We know that we're behind on investment. How do we get into a leadership position? Will we lead by this, or is there more that we need to do?
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you so much for having me and for having organized this discussion. I think the last time I saw this room that full was when I hosted Gary Kasparov and Eric Schmidt more than a year ago. So congratulations to Digital Europe. You're at least as well known as those two are together in the digital space. But to go directly onto your question, I think it was 10 days ago or so when the Digital Decade report came out. And I got very worried about the numbers that were out there. We are far below the targets. That report shows explicitly and very clearly how the global revenue in ICT has fallen drastically. We are using so much that's produced, developed, innovated abroad than here in Europe. And I know there are many European companies, including Mistral, that are trying to change that. But we definitely should be thinking also about that part of the angle when we legislate, whether it's on the AI Act or it's about other legislation, because I have been calling for quite some time to focus on our competitiveness, particularly when it comes to the AI Act. From the point of view of ITRE, I think we have put forward a very ambitious proposal when it comes to regulatory sandboxes, a more narrow definition on the scope, a research and open source exemption, and most importantly, more realistic and feasible expectations for businesses that could ensure a better level playing field for European businesses that would like to compete. Would this be enough to reach the ambitious targets that Europe has put forward when it comes to innovation and where it wants to be in the tech space? I would say it very much depends. It very much depends on those negotiations that are undergoing now, and it very much depends what are our ambitions ahead. Do the current regulatory and digital jigsaw make sense together? What about its implementation? And more importantly, what's going to be proposed ahead of us? Not necessarily when it comes to legislation, but more like what are the incentives? What are those proposals that we can put forward, such as capital market unions or setting up a tech sovereign fund or cutting red tape across the continent to make sure that the single market is a fully fledged single market. And when we speak about the single market, it's actually a digital single market that we don't have to mention it. So it will depend on a number of things. But I think the file that's being discussed today, of course, has its part of the puzzle.
Thank you so much. You mentioned it, you said a single market. 8% of our SMEs trade across one European border. So it seems that we are not very scalable. Somehow we don't succeed in scaling these tech solutions in Europe. I think we have 4 companies in top 100 of the largest tech companies. So Cedric, are you going to be one of on the top 100 list? And will this AI Act, will it make you more competitive?
Well, first, thank you very much for having me today. It reminds me of very good memories in a different role, actually. But anyway, to begin with your question, I would say that obviously Europe is still lagging behind. I mean, there is a catch-up movement lately. If you take the amount of money that was raised by European startup 15 years ago versus the US, I think it was something like 1 versus 15. 2 years ago, it was 1 versus 3. So obviously the US are still leading the competition from far, but the derivative of the curve is not so bad, let's say so. What is even more enthusiastic is that, and it's especially true in AI, is that with the latest generation of technology, especially generative AI, what you see with companies like Mistral, but also like Aleph Alpha in Germany, but also like Poolside in France, is that Europe is not 10 years behind. Europe is not even 5 years behind. Europe is maybe like 1 year behind. It's going to require a lot of money. We're going to get back to that. But our assessment at Mistral is that we will be able and we could compete with the best American models. And I think Poolside would say the same. And I think Aleph Alpha would say the same. For a single reason is that the 2 bottlenecks that you have in generative AI is money and talents. You have something like between 50 and 100 people that knows how to do those LLMs. I would say that 30% of those guys are Europeans. And some of them decided to quit American companies with their knowledge and experience to create a European startup. Mistral, we created the company in, I don't remember, but maybe something in June. In 2 weeks, we raised 100 billion. Just to remind that Anthropic last week raised 4 billion, but we are in the first stages. Poolside, in 2 weeks, they raised 140 million seed investment. So, well, it's still limited, but it's something is happening that could not have happened like 5 years ago in one of the most critical technology for the future. It's important for economy, it's important for culture. Because if we assume that each of us will have something like an AI assistant in the coming years. If that AI assistant speaks good English, but bad French and bad Spanish, or even bad other European language, it has only American cultural references. I have an example. If you ask a French guy who invited the plane, he's going to answer you Clément Ader. If you ask a Brazilian, he's going to answer something like Arturo Santos. And if you ask an American, he's going to answer the Wright brothers. Obviously, ChatGPT is answering the Wright brothers. Just to tell you that this is a business and an economic fight. This is also a cultural fight because we are touching upon something that is really the information domain. So we can be in the game for once, I would say. As a French minister, I was used to be a little bit disappointed on the fact that we are lagging behind, but for once we can be in the game. The truth is, because your question was pretty direct, on the AI Act. The question is, will we be allowed to be in the game? There are a lot of discussions. Well, if I'm straightforward too, I would say that, at least from Mistral point of view, I know there are a lot of discussion on the AI Act. There are two main questions. The first one is about the famous Article 28B. So obviously there are questions on there are a need for AI regulation on the application. Because if you have a medical device or like something that is used by the state, obviously it should be controlled. The sheer question of should you regulate technology by itself, from our point of view, is not the right approach. Hammers can be used to kill people or to pinch on a nail, but you don't regulate the selling of hammers or knives. So this is first issue, and second issue is about open source. So there has been a lot of fantasy about open source. We do think that it provides a lot of democratic and economic balance. It allows a lot more transparency on the models. And there is within the current version of the EP version of the AI Act something, to be technical, an exception on the exception on foundational models, which is worrying us. Why is it important for us? And sorry to be a little bit long. It's because, as I said, Anthropic raised 4 billion last week, after having been raising something like 2 billion 6 months before. We are in a big game. We need big money. And what is at stake is European sovereignty and European culture, European culture. So it's not to say that we don't need any regulation, but if we are not allowed to compete with the Americans, we definitely won't be able to. All the more as you know, the guys that are into the competition are pretty powerful.
So a very clear message, regulate the use, not the technology. Hopefully, I mean, that's what we're doing, because I think one of the things I spoke to a company called Radiobotics. Also, they do detection of breast cancer. They can do it with totally exact, even before it becomes cancer, much more than even doctors can. But they say we struggle to get data. It's super, super difficult. We cannot, the scalability is very, very hard to actually obtain in Europe. So they are, in 2 countries, but they are struggling to grow. I could mention Corti. They do voice recognition. They struggle to grow. There's too many barriers, too difficult to get data, unclarity, too many borders, too many institutions. I think there is like 16, one per länder in each German state even, which makes it very little scalable. So Eva, I mean, you've been one of the people saying like sandboxes is we need to sandbox. So how can these, first of all, I mean, how do they get the talent if we need to sandbox in each country? Do we need them in each country, or can we just have one European sandbox where we kind of gather all the intelligence and everybody knows how to be compliant? How does that work? How do you see that helping companies?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I think talent is a different topic, and maybe Cedric has some ideas on that one later on, because we've talked briefly with him about the importance of talent. And we might have been talking over the past couple of years about skills. I've worked with Digital Europe on the topic, with the Commission. But here it's a different dimension of talent that we actually need, both for the implementation and most importantly for the growth and for the innovation. But let me focus briefly on sandboxes. Well, we are very proud from an ITRA perspective that the text that is currently sits as a compromise. It's being proposed from the Industry and Innovation Committee compared to the Commission initial proposal. We pushed to be much more ambitious and having a much more ambitious approach on sandboxes. We wanted that to be a space where entrepreneurs can not just test, but they can actually innovate, that they can create. And what will happen now is that the text actually mandates member states to have a sandbox, although it allows cross-border as well as regional and local sandboxes. And this, I think, taps into the very valid point that you've made, Cecilia. So I think the idea is to be able to provide access to pre-deployment services, to regulatory guidance, and almost give the opportunity to have a presumption of conformity. And I think what this means is basically that European companies will be having a dedicated space for innovation. They will have in this way a faster access to the market, especially for SMEs and startups, with that almost presumption of conformity. And this is a real big advantage, and it was a very difficult point to win throughout, so to say, the negotiations. I think the regulatory feedback and learning will also be part of this, which means that we'll have more evidence when we need to update the AI Act. And ultimately, I would want to see different sandboxes specializing in different comparative advantages, whether that's fintech, whether that's the metaverse, generative AI, industrial AI, and so on and so forth. If one could find a bit of a balance in that whole act where we do more on the innovative part, that's perhaps the strongest text one can find in the AI Act.
Thank you so much. So saying, if we want those value embedded in our, we also need companies that carries them, right? So how do we do that, and how do we make sure that they also carry at a scale? So you're a specialist now on generative AI, and so are there actually a risk in these large language models? And on transparency, copyright, how do you respond to these concerns?
Well, there are many angles to enter to that. The first question is that there is obviously a question that might be a little bit more complicated than what I read in the newspapers. So let's first, for instance, address there are simple questions. Let's address, for instance, the agreements between artists in the US and producers. I think this is on the application layer. So do you keep people into translation, actors, and things like that? I mean, that is not about technology, it's about the use of technology. And I think this will entail a lot of questions within a lot of businesses. But this is not on the technology to bear the responsibility of that. There is... on the copyright, which is a real question, my personal point of view and what we think at Mistral is that there has been an agreement in 2019 at the European Parliament on those issues, which is saying that there is an opt-out position that should be enforced. We need standard to enforce that. And maybe there should be stronger retaliation if this is not enforced, but we think this is a good way to go. But once again, we need standards. Otherwise, it's only lip service. But we think this is a good way to go. Why? Because I think as Europeans, we should bear in mind that, and it's not a question of is this a European or American LLMs, we need a lot of European content into those LLMs. Because if we don't have a lot of European content into those LLMs, they will be American LLMs. Because first, you have, I think, 90% or maybe 95% of the content of the web that is English content. So if we have a strong application on European content, then we won't be surprised that we don't have any political influence on the 3 to 4 big chatbots that will be shaping our daily lives. So we have to be able to, and it's more the former statesman who is speaking there, we have to be able that there's a tension between application of copyright, protection of copyright, and the fact that we want European culture to be on board, even OpenAI or Anthropic LLM. Last point, which I think is important, I was stressing the fact that open source is important. I had that discussion with the European Commission to enforce copyright protection, to enforce the fight against disinformation, which from my point of view is the biggest problem that is raised, or at least the most urgent problem that is raised by LLMs. We will need LLMs. Because the best way to detect if this is a counterfeit or a made-up picture or, text is to use powerful LLMs. Watermarking, fingerprinting, I advise you to read the latest study that was published by Stanford. Not sure that's going to work. This would be great, but not sure it's going to work. So the best way to fight LLMs is to use LLMs. So European regulators is going to be forced to use LLMs. So what will we do? We will ask OpenAI to give us access to something we don't know how it's working, to check Entropic and Bard, and then ask Entropic to give us access to something to help us check it's not going to work. This is why we need open source LLMs, because we need our regulators in countries in Europe be able to take those LLMs, shape it, know how it's working because it's white box, and use it to regulate and to enforce. Otherwise, we can write whatever we want. It's not going to be working at all because the technology is tougher than what we can do with our bare hands. And I think, sorry, one point more. On that point, one of the proposal of the EP, which is very interesting, is the AI body. I think you call that name. We need a single enforcement. We need a single enforcement, and we need something that is adaptive because the technology is developing very fast. What we call frontier model today is going to be small model, are going to be small model in 1 year from now. And I was mentioning the fact that there are only 100 people in the world that knows how to do those LLMs. Those are the same guys that know really to do how to control those LLMs. It's interesting because having been a minister 2 years ago, now I can ask the real question to the real guys. And the answers are not really reassuring, I must say. So we need to take one of two of these guys to control what those LLMs are doing. Europe might be, and it's not even, I mean, salaries of those people in big techs are 1 to 2 million euro a year. We just have to bear that in mind. So we need one of that guy or two of those guys being able to work for the European Union to check what the big LLMs are doing. We won't be able to do that even in France or in Germany, not to say the other countries. So we need a single enforcement. We need something that is very adaptive, and we need to have the right team being able to check what the others are doing.
I think that was an amazing point. There are, 50 to 100 people around the world that actually knows this. If you can attract them in the European Commission or somewhere, all the countries together, we are very, very lucky. They are very hard to get, I would say. So single enforcement, a very strong point there. So, and also a very strong point that there is an opt-out that was decided in 2019. And if we want European content and algorithms, it's a very good idea actually to allow access to European content. If not, it will basically not be in there. So the next question is for you, Eva. So we've just learned a little bit, like done wrong, this can really slow us down. And you told in the start that we are already, I think in Europe, private investment is like 10 times lower than it is in the US. I said we have 4 tech companies left on the top 100 and decreasing, unfortunately. We do not lack innovation. We have really clever people but typically they are, board or travel or leave the continent simply due to lack of scale and lack of capital. So what does that mean? I mean, for Europe's resilience, our security, our ability to innovate if we do this wrong. How do we make sure that we balance that, and how do you foresee that we will do that?
It's a very tough question if one has to actually answer it. And I think a little bit dwelled into it. I think, we have been relying on being good at things, but not maybe being the best at things. And I would go a little bit backwards where I think the problem comes from. I think over the past couple of years, Europe has been known for its way of life, which has, brought a lot of benefits to our societies. It has created this sort of social market economy, security. It made us also very comfortable, though. And it's a good thing. But when you're very comfortable, you're not necessarily willing to take risks. You're not necessarily willing to go beyond what's expected from you. And to a certain extent, our risk-shy culture has led to the point of not being at the frontier of where technological advancements happen. It's been difficult to bring a product to the market and make it something that everyone wants to have and everyone wants to buy. It has also made us a little bit, this comfortableness, a bit complacent about our growth and the necessity for competitiveness in Europe. And I think in the next years to come, we're going to see how difficult it will be to sustain our lives. How difficult it will be to sustain our lives should there is not enough growth in Europe. And this is why, for me, it's time for more strategic-looking, forward-looking legislation. I've mentioned Capital Markets Union. How many years do we talk about that exactly? Something like a tech sovereign fund. I know these are areas and proposals that are very difficult to achieve at the European level. But perhaps we need that strategy. We need that boldness. We need to show that it's time for us to be able to execute it. So I would say, you know, apart from what I've mentioned, particularly on the AI Act, if we want the resilience and the security and the ability to innovate, we need to change the way we look at things to start with. So a lot that has to do with our mindset.
Thank you so much. A very quick question to you as the last question. So I know for sure we had a roundtable also with the Commission, and a few of my members actually told, well, we are actually considering manufacturing medtech companies. We are actually considering relocating because both with the Data Act, we have to share our data, which is our IP, and now with this AI coming, we are doing automated solutions in manufacturing, or we are actually using algorithms within, and we will have additional burdens, and it will be difficult for us to innovate and be at the forefront of Chinese and other foreign players. They have much more kind of quicker research and development processes. Do you think there is a real chance of some of the key positions, not only in companies like yourself, but also in other industries like medtech or manufacturing or health or the others, that this will be like the something that can tilt the balance towards moving away?
So the short answer would be yes. And it's disappointing for me to answer that. So I did not got involved into Mistral to help the American growth. And the three researchers that created Mistral did not leave Meta and DeepMind to go to the US. And I don't think we will do. But the fact is, if we are talking in real numbers, and sorry to be vulgar again, Anthropic raised 4 billion. Mistral raised 100 million. It's not a secret that in the coming months we will have to raise a few hundred millions, later a few billions. And there is not only what is in the text, which is problematic. There is also the fact that there are people that need to invest that money. And currently what we see among American VCs, among global investors, that they are looking at AI in Europe and they are waiting for the result of the negotiation. And if their assessment, not even the real text, their assessment is that it's not worth investing there because it's not going to create global champions, then they're going to invest in American companies.
With that, I would say capital market, more strategic outlook on how we want to create a framework, single enforcement mechanism where it's easy. Maybe we are lucky to get one guy or girl that actually understand how this work and develop it and assess it. Really balancing this and understanding the real use cases and using sandboxes to continuously evaluate. And let's use the opt-out mechanism and make sure that there is European content available for development of AI in Europe. With that, I would say it's been super, super interesting. And on behalf of Sesamo, MedTech Europe, and COSIR and Digital Europe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Now, whilst we do the changeover, good afternoon. My name is Chris. I'm the head of communications at Digital Europe.
So we heard some of the big questions already in the AI Act. Balancing the risks and benefits, the generative AI question, implementation, enforcement, and how to scale a successful AI business in Europe. But now we're going to zoom in to a couple of key sectors. So first, I would like to pass over to Gabriele Favaro, Policy Officer from Sesimo, to introduce the next panel on manufacturing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. As already anticipated by Chris, now we will, let's say, zoom in a little bit on the intersection of artificial intelligence and manufacturing technologies, advanced manufacturing in general. So basically, let's say the rapid advancements in AI have led to an enhanced human-machine interaction, a new era of it. And they're transforming the way people, workers, companies create, innovate, and work. And today we have with us a diverse panel of experts, basically, that will bring different perspectives. In particular, we have with us Mr. Paul Rebus, CEO of FANUC Benelux, who will bring the perspective, the industry perspective, let's say, emphasizing how AI can enhance production processes, can improve efficiency, but at the same time, let's say, refining a little bit also the importance of ethical considerations when it comes, for example, to worker safety. We are privileged to have with us Mrs. Tatiana Evas, who is connected remotely because of health issues. I don't know if you can see her, but she's a legal and policy officer at the European Commission, DG Connect. And she's been working directly on the AI Act itself, on the proposal from the Commission. So she will shed the light on the legislative effort to regulate AI applications, and also, of course, ensuring that innovation, as we've heard before, can coexist actually with a responsible adoption. And last but not least, we have with us Mr. Daniel Lofer, Senior Policy Analyst at Access Now, who joins us to represent the interests of civil society and individuals. Daniel's work centers on mitigating AI's negative impact on society, on human rights and privacy. And he will offer, let's say, a critical perspective on the ethical implication that AI can have on various contexts, in this case on advanced manufacturing. So our discussion will touch upon policy-related issues, technical advancements, in particular in FANUC, as we will see in a moment, as well as the ethical dimension. So we will explore how AI is enhancing the collaboration between machines, between robots and humans and workers. And at the same time, the challenges that this presents, as well as the strategies, also from the policy point of view, needed to strike a proper balance between fostering industrial innovation and preserving, safeguarding individual and collective rights. As we navigate the trilogue negotiations in this period, we must address the challenge, of course, of making AI an enabler of innovation rather than a barrier to it. And basically, with this, I would like, without further ado, to kick off this panel and ask the first question to Mr. Paul Rebus. Paul, as you are CEO of FANUC Benelux, one of the largest robotics and automation solutions providers in the world, you have a unique insight, let's say, on how AI, the implications of AI applications, basically in production processes, are improving efficiency in a broader sense. So, could you share with us, with the audience today, some specific example of how AI is transforming also the collaboration between the worker, the operator, and the machine, and how basically you are doing it in FANUC and in the industry in general?
Okay, thank you. Well, FANUC is, as Gabriel said, is a global market leader in industrial automation. And that means that we talk about robots, CNC controls. And for us, AI is more where we see it as a supporting, bringing benefits, not only for the companies building machines, but also for operators. I go maybe a little bit technical because I'm coming from a technical side. where we use AI, and for example, where we see AI is bringing today a benefit even already in sustainability. We really see AI as bringing benefits to companies and not it's something where we need to be scared of. For sustainability, for example, where we see it today more and more is, for example, in production companies, temperature is always changing in a production hall. And today, when you have an operator, and that's something we're also facing today, is we have more and more lack on workers. So we have more a new generation coming in the production hall, which less experience. And where there we want to have is that AI can support these operators. For example, when machines are standing still, they start production, the output of the machine is different when the machine is getting warmer. So there is some destruction in the metal. So this has an impact. So with AI today, we can really measure on terminal compensation what is going on. So that means when somebody puts a machine on a Monday morning or on Friday evening, that the output of the machine is exactly the same. And this is very important where we see that AI with the data is really bringing a supporting role to the operator. As another example, then we go more to the robotic side, is in the past, a robot was doing a movement from A to B. Today we have vision, and vision is more and more coming into automation because we see robots getting more like humanoids. They're getting eyes with vision. We get force sensing for the feeling. But today it was not possible to have automation in the food industry, because if we do automation, for example, with robots, with vision, it was always a fixed product. But an apple is not an apple. They are never the same. A banana is never the same. So we need, with AI, we can do this. So this is opening a new area for us where we can do automation. And besides this, on top of that, we also have inspection, where we have today a lot of people doing inspection by eyes. With vision, we can train the system with AI possibilities to say a product is good or not good. So these are a little bit examples of how we see it in the market today.
Thank you very much, Paul. This is very interesting also because, as you mentioned, technical, but I think it's quite clear there are a lot of positive implications in terms of also of cost savings, waste management, in terms of efficiency from the sustainability point of view as well. I think about predictive maintenance, reduction of waste, and so on. So these are, let's say, the positive sides, just to give you a little bit an understanding of what we're talking about in the advanced manufacturing sector. And now I would like to ask the second question to Miss Tatiana Evans, who is connected now online. Tatiana, please tell us if you can hear us. We have no feedback.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Now we can see you as well. Welcome. So building on the previous discussion, considering basically that we are leaving the trilogues now and the discussion around AI of the past month and the current months, basically. In your opinion, what are the most significant challenges that can allow a right balance between innovation and regulation? What you have basically lived when it came to writing the proposal, and in the context of manufacturing, but in general, we've heard before regulatory sandboxes as one of the strategies. But from the European Commission point of view, let's say, what are the challenges and the approaches to strike the proper balance between the innovation that we hear and regulation needs?
Okay. Well, thank you for this good question, I think, which very much connects to the beginning of the event, where we discussed this. We started to discuss this, and I followed with very great interest the discussions. Actually, I think the whole framing of innovation versus regulation is a bit outdated and I would say not correct. And I think here I really liked what Cédric said, that it's actually not so much about the actual text about actual text of AI Act, but so much about perception. And in that sense, I really think we collectively as Europeans, speaking here on behalf of Europe, should really make sure that we also if I can use the word, sell our AI Act globally in the right way, because exactly also coming back to, for example, what Sergey Lagodinsky said, trust must be earned, and the AI Act will help our providers, producers of AI systems within within the European Union to earn this trust by people. So we're actually quite globally leading on this. We started to think about it much earlier than in other regions. And we see actually also now on a global level a certain degree of convergence of going into this innovative regulation of new technologies. So I think we should take also benefit and sometimes also collectively try to also work a bit on the discourse, let's say, globally, to also bring up the benefits which also this AI Act will bring. And I think this is actually very crucial in current very competitive and global policy and regulatory framework which we have. Of course, we always will have to compete for the investments, and this is not new, and AI is one of the technologies. We have also other technologies, quantum, chips, etc., for which we also need huge investments. We know that Europe needs to catch up in certain degrees, but we also have a lot of potential. And I think in that sense, if we take all of this holistically together, that's why initially also European Commission always argues that we need to focus on trust, but also on excellence. And we have our very well and running programs like Digital Europe and Horizon Europe programs, which provide a lot of substantial funding to the foundational research in a lot of areas. And I think all of this and I agree with previous speakers that all of this we need to bring together and build on this. But in that sense, I think we should really collectively see how to also, like I said, promote this innovative regulation on the Act. And I think here, especially if we speak about the manufacturing industry, and for the same degree from the medical devices, for this specific sector, I think the Act is very good because it builds on the internal market logic, and it also builds on the well-established and well-running product safety legislation approach. And I think here again, I think it's one of our biggest assets vis-a-vis other global players, that we have already well-functioning system for conformity assessment and most market monitoring, which already exists. So we don't need to build from scratch how this supervision and how the conformity assessment procedure will work. And I think we have, in that sense, we are running even in front of other regions. We start to think about it. So I also, in my capacity in the Commission, follow a lot of international developments. So IGF was mentioned today, but also bilateral discussions with the United States. And you see already that in last years, the discourse also, for example, United States is changing vis-a-vis regulation. It's not anymore regulation versus innovation. Regulation is also entering US. So in that sense, and I will conclude my first interventions just saying that we should also try to be more positive and also more appreciate what we do in Europe and also how we communicate this to the outside world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tatiana, for this intervention. Absolutely. As you said, basically for our sectors, the AI Act is quite beneficial in terms of its relationship also with the machinery regulation. We have absolutely to communicate in the proper manner what are the advantages, especially for the actors. I refer especially to SMEs that generally envision the legislation as barriers, as I was saying before. And that's why we try to disseminate this information through these kind of events and through other platforms, because we think that what you basically underlined about building trust, and today the event is called Building Trust in EU Innovation. It's one of the key priorities for our sector and for the industry in general. With this said, I would like to ask the following question to our third speaker, Mr. Daniel Löfer. So Daniel, as we have said before, your work is focused on mitigating AI's negative impact or potential negative impact on civil liberties, human rights. So I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, how can we strike a proper balance between the benefits that we have underlined before also concerning our industry,
and at the same time, the potential ethical implications that we have when we deploy AI solutions. So in particular, I could think about surveillance or, I don't know, workers' performance monitoring or hiring practices, this kind of example that, of course, when we talk about AI, they come directly into our mind. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks again for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. I think it's really important, and we just heard Tatiana mention the idea of like trust in innovation. That I think we really need to have a nuance about what AI we want, what innovation we want, and what innovation we don't necessarily want. Because again, when we hear this regulation versus innovation, there's a very simplistic and misleading idea of all innovation is good. Innovation just means new things. Or it means excellence. You have to decide what you mean by the word. And, we have spyware startups in the EU. We have surveillance startups in the EU. And I don't know if that's something that we want and we want to encourage. If we want to actually have excellence, if we want to have AI that, means something. And when I buy products for my kids, for example, the CE mark means something. It means that there's safety to it. It means something. And if we want that to actually mean something in AI, then we need to make decisions about what type of innovation we're trying to encourage and what we're not. And, we heard some very interesting examples about how AI can really help in manufacturing, in industry. But what we see as well is that when we speak about things in this simplistic manner, like we want to encourage all innovation, we want more AI, then we're lumping very different things under the same umbrella. So we see in, for example, Amazon warehouses, in other very large, technically advanced kind of arenas like that, that while there is incredible innovation happening with supply chains and things, there's also really horrible surveillance happening. And you mentioned worker surveillance. We've seen how AI surveillance systems have been used in union busting, monitoring when employees are potentially talking about this. We heard an example earlier about wanting emotion recognition to stop planes crashing. I wasn't aware that pilots falling asleep was a massive cause of that. But, making a distinction here, things to monitor safety in the workplace, we need to be very careful that that doesn't slip over into surveillance. So obviously we don't want people falling asleep in, key positions that could lead to serious safety risks. But what about if the same system is being repurposed to monitor discontent on the work floor that leads to people being fired? We've seen how, systems like this are presented as trying to benefit employees, but what they're actually doing is getting people out of jobs who are potentially organizing, engaging in union activities. And I think like a key thing that we always need to think about when we're analyzing benefit versus risk, etc., is whose benefit. Some system being implemented within industry may very much benefit profit margins, but maybe it really subjects and destroys employees. I think Amazon warehouses, for example, we see that the turnover, people can't keep up with this pace of algorithmic management. It's actually quite inhuman. So we really need to look and think carefully in a nuanced way, what innovation do we want? Who's actually benefiting from things? And, a big problem, I think, as well, is who is usually subjected to these systems? It's not management. If I'm not a manager, but if I'm applying for my next job, I won't be evaluated by AI, I presume. But it's lower level jobs. It's people who have often less of a voice, less of an ability to advocate for themselves. So, yeah, my final point would be that really nuance about what we want, and then we can meaningfully say that we're supporting AI in Europe that is trustworthy, that is excellent. Because if we just support everything and deregulate and remove all barriers, then, yeah, there's not going to be any real identity to the AI that's coming out of here.
Thank you. Absolutely interesting point from this view. Also, because we are aware of the fact that from one side we have these kind of risks. From the other side, we consider also the fact that some monitoring could be beneficial. So everything is about how you frame actually the definition of what you're talking about, how you want to tackle the topic. So building on what you said, Daniel, I would like to ask you a follow-up question. Because you mentioned, of course, that sometimes companies are mostly concerned and focused on metrics, on reaching certain targets, and so on. So, in your opinion, what kind of advantage could bring a civil society organization like Access Now or similar in the collaboration with the industry? So, let's say, to help, let's say, making these two sides of the same medal converge, because we are hearing basically that you are not condemning entire innovation as other people could think, and here industry doesn't want to just go against the worker, against the people. So how do you think this kind of organization could actually improve through collaborative steps their discussion, the dialogue with industry?
Yeah, great question. I mean, and just to say very clearly, we are a technology organization. Like, we look at how technology supports people's digital rights. Things like encryption, online platforms, everything have enabled people to, exercise freedom of expression, all of these various human rights, but they have to be done correctly. So we're very far from an anti-tech organization, but, you really need to put the right safeguards on tech so that it works for people. I think one thing that we're really seeing is that we need coalitions. We need very diverse perspectives to be in communication with each other so that the right insights and, the right support is happening. Speaking from the work that we've done on the AI Act, we've seen very interesting and very productive collaboration happening between digital rights organizations, disability rights organizations, migrants' rights organizations. And I think when we're looking at this context of the workplace, of manufacturing, industry, etc., we're going to have much more collaboration with unions as well. I think everyone's hearing rumors that there could be a piece of regulation about AI in the workplace during the next Commission mandate. I think that will be very interesting to see how that happens. One of the key points, and here to specifically refer to the AI Act, where some kind of collaboration can be interesting is, and one of the things we were most happy about when we saw the AI Act proposal was the proposed public database in Article 60. So for all high-risk AI systems, for those of you who don't know, this is the list of AI systems in Annex 3 of the AI Act, which are not per se bad, something that's always important to remember, but they're systems where if things are done badly, then there are serious risks to human rights. So the AI Act puts forward a bunch of rudimentary responsible development practices for those systems to follow so that things are done correctly. But when you have a public database so that we can see what AI systems are being used, so that workers know what AI systems are being used on them, we really create the grounds for possible trust. Because the situation that we find, and I think a lot of other organizations like us find, is that we just don't know that systems are in use. We have no idea what systems are being used. Workers don't know what systems management are using on them. And if anyone is serious about, trustworthy AI or building this ecosystem of excellence and trust, then there has to be transparency. If you're using something that you're worried about the people it's being used on finding out about it, then you're not doing anything that could be called trustworthy. So I think if this database survives the trilogue negotiations without exemptions, and there aren't opt-out exemptions that are extremely broad from the high-risk list of systems, then we could see a really meaningful form of transparency that would allow people to know what AI systems are being used, find out basic information about them, and then engage productively with industry and, with public authorities, with whoever's using them. Because, we don't believe that when harms happen, it's always some nefarious purpose of using an evil AI system. A lot of it is oversight. A lot of it is that a system is deployed with a simplistic understanding of the context and the risks are not understood. And so this is the collaboration I was talking about. When you talk to organizations who are experts in workers' rights, migrants' rights, disability rights, they can provide the insights to say, look, this is going to harm people in that situation. So that's, I think, one way that a productive collaboration could really happen.
Thank you very much for for these comments, because it's fundamental to consider also this side of the things and improve collaboration, because as you said, from different points of view, in the end, you could have more awareness of where to tackle and what. And building again on this note, now I would like to hear from you, Paul, some positive examples of, let's say, low-risk AI applications that, in your experience, that you actually saw, improved the workforce somehow. So let's say workforce development or improved worker safety standards, like how AI in the recent years improved workers in an overall perspective.
Well, I think I heard monitoring. I heard earlier today also the example about mobility and the person with the flag. When we look to our business again, where AI, we always see it as a supporting role. I think this is important. And as said before also, is that the lack of workers we have today is how can we use AI in supporting us to reduce development time and getting products faster in the market. I think this is important. So that's where we see where AI can bring a lot of added value. For example, again, when we look to machines, every machine needs to be tuned. And there with AI today, we give a big supporting role to operators, that it not has to done, the knowledge not is in the person, it's really coming from AI. So there we can reduce a lot of time. If we look to safety today, I think this is the car example is a very good one. Is today when we look for industrial robot automation, we see that still today robots are protected by fences. And when we look to the future, we think that this will not happen anymore if we can have AI with video, and then the monitoring is coming up again. Is how can we see that somebody is walking in a production hall? We detect that this is a person, and it's only detected it's a person that when he's coming closer to a robot, that robot speeds go down and even will stop. So this is how we look to it, is how can we also then reduce workspaces so companies can build smaller stations that can use less space. Also, again, sustainability footprint is coming up there. This is important. And I think today also GPT was used. Today, there is still a lot of stupid programming work that needs to be done in machining world. And we see that also there that ChatGPT can be used to do this code programming in the future to support operators.
Thank you very much. This is absolutely interesting and gives us insights basically on the fact that we have still a lot of opportunities to be discovered, and it's through basically understanding more the downsides and the opportunities, the challenges and the good aspects that we can build it together. And through the legislation, we can safeguard and at the same time guarantee that we develop a positive environment for all the players involved, from the worker to the company, from the management to the rights advocates, in order to guarantee, let's say, what we've listened before. So to wrap up a little bit our panel discussion, I would like to ask our final question to Tatiana Evas here with us. So we've heard basically testimonials, inputs from one side, from an industry representative, from the other side, digital rights advocate. So of course the concerns are different. So improving efficiency, and on the other side, safeguarding, of course, collective individual rights. In your opinion, what are, let's say, the strategies and maybe also the provisions that you see that could that could reach a good balance between these two dimensions? We know that the AI Act is kind of an horizontal piece of legislation, so any kind of actor in society is involved what do you think are the best strategies, as well as the provisions already in the text that are fundamental, are crucial to reach this balance and to have these two dimensions balanced?
No, thank you for a very good question. Actually, I think AI Act is our solution, and it's very innovative and it's very good. It's actually very positive, and I explain why. I think it's good both for manufacturers, because as we explained, specifically for the manufacturing sector, which is very important for Europe and where we're actually quite strong, you already can build already on the existing procedures and processes, and as explained, so it will be not that difficult for this sector to adjust. So you can really save a lot on adjustment costs and understanding how the system works. But I also very strongly believe that it's very good for fundamental rights protection. And I think one of the points mentioned by Daniel was the responsible development practices. And I think that's actually what AI Act very strongly will build. As you know, for example, obligations for high-risk AI systems will have to undergo risk management. We will have to have a risk management system. And for the first time, actually in product safety legislation, this requirement will address risks not only related to traditional safety and security, but also to fundamental rights. So it means that already in developing the product, AI-enabled product, the manufacturer or provider, as we speak in AI Act, will have to really do like throughout risk assessment, which is actually very different from the approach, for example, taken by different other pieces of legislation, which actually look already post factum when the product is already used and may, for example, infringe certain rights. So I think bringing this new dimension into the product safety legislation, AI Act actually brings a certain innovation, which in my really sincere opinion from very beginning, that would bring a new dimension for the enforceability of fundamental rights and protection of fundamental rights. Would it solve all the issues? No, of course not. And AI Act is only one piece of the legislation, one part of the puzzle in the big picture. So, and of course, but we should also not put too much, let's say, burden and expectation on the Act, because it's, like I said, it's just one piece of legislation. We have other pieces of legislation on consumer protection, on personal data protection, and so on, and the whole idea, that's why we, in drafting AI Act, try to rely on a new legislative framework, is really to blend it as much as possible into the existing structures, while still providing this new kind of addressing the new challenges which AI will bring. So I think bringing this together, I really strongly believe, and that was the intention from very beginning, that AI Act in itself already provides this balancing between, on one hand, need to build this trust, and as Eva Maidel said, a certain degree of safety and security to which European consumers and citizens are used to, but on the other hand, also addressing the challenges and concerns which are also very well known to us in terms of fundamental rights protection. So yes, indeed, the AI Act is a product safety legislation-based logic, but it doesn't mean that fundamental rights or environmental, etc., concerns are not addressed. It's just a different way to look at the system. And I think exactly by building this positive narrative, as had been said, it's actually very crucial here that we work on this together and try to improve this piece of legislation also in practice, how it will be applied after we adopt the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Absolutely, yes. I mean, the implementation phase will be crucial. We've discussed about building trust. We've discussed about enhancing collaboration. So I think that from our side, it's quite clear how we shouldn't take for granted anything. We shouldn't have negative consideration of any kind of practice related to AI just because of it, and any positive on the other side, any kind of acceptance without questioning anything. So I would like to thank you all, to thank our guest speakers today for their amazing contribution. Thanks, Ms. Evas, for joining us remotely. And thank you everyone for listening to us. So now I will end the floor to the conference moderator, Chris Roof, and for the next panel discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We're running 15 minutes behind schedule. We've been given half an hour, so we're going to try to keep it short and crisp so that at the end of the session, the people in the room, if you have questions, you can ask them. So the idea of this session is that we give you a bit more insight into how conformity assessments of AI-based devices are done today under the medical device legislation, and also give some insight into how that could be impacted by AI systems. And we've been doing such conformity assessments for software products for many decades now in our sector. Personally, I worked with AI systems for the last decade and a half, obviously. In the beginning, that was with older techniques, random forests, support vector Bayesian networks. Nowadays, it's more often deep learning systems. The idea of today is that we give you some insight into how this process is happening, and we could give that perspective from different angles, because the medical device ecosystem is very rich. We, of course, have the manufacturers, the subcontractors, we have authorized representatives. For some devices, we have also scientific advisory panels, test labs, and we have also notified bodies. Notified bodies are third-party companies that assist in the conformity assessment of practically all AI-based medical devices today under the medical device regulation. And so today I have with me here Andreas Purde, who works for a German notified body, TÜV Süd. He's Global Director of Active Medical Devices, which includes AI and software devices. And we have Jeffrey de Weschker, from the Belgian notified body SGS, which you are the head of. To start the session, I would like to ask Andreas to, in a nutshell, sketch for the audience what a conformity assessment of an AI-based medical device entails today under the medical device regulations, and if you could give some insight into how this is going to change with the AI Act, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction. First of all, I think you should know that there are multiple conformity assessment routes which a manufacturer of a medical device can take in order to bring devices on the market. By far, the most common one, and that's the one I will talk about, is what we call the so-called Annex 9 it is. That's the full quality management system, which a manufacturer has to undergo, plus an assessment of the technical documentation. Here it depends on the classification, whether you have to assess all of the technical documentations they have or just a sample of them. That's how we do it today. And that's the most common one. So I would say in our organization, Jeffrey, I don't know what you say, approximately 95+% is Annex 9. So the full quality management system plus assessment of the technical documentation. As Cohen already indicated, we are doing AI-based or assessing AI-based medical devices already today. And hopefully we're doing it not too bad. So we have a quite comprehensive checklist for medical AI and medical devices, which we're going to use in our technical documentation assessment as well in audits. And this is what we're doing today. And the second piece of the question is what happens if we do have the AI Act? Yep, sorry for my honest words, but there are some traps which we have to avoid as notified bodies. And this is also the reason why we are here and talking to you. First of all, it can already be cumbersome to have one notification. And if we are now moving into two notifications, this is something which can bring a lot of work to the notified bodies as such. So this is something we definitely have to discuss what happens if the situation comes up. And then you're bumping into some situations where the two regulations, let's call it in that way, can be different. So we're seeing differences in terms of classification. So what happens if a medical device is in that class, but the AI part in the medical device is in a different class? So what do you do then? This is something which must be solved. Also, we see different sampling approaches. So the medical device sampling might not necessarily be exactly the same as the one we need for AI. And this is also something which has to be solved. And I just wanted to transport the message that I think those problems are solvable, but we have to address them in order to keep up with what was already said, that we don't want to fall behind. We want to catch up. And actually, this is the reason why we should avoid those kind of problems and solve the gaps as soon as we see them.
Thank you. So I retain that often you come assess the quality system of the manufacturer and you assess the technical documentation, but not necessarily of every device. It can be sampling based depending on the class.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Some of you may have heard that there are capacity issues with the regulatory system for medical devices, which make that some devices are not available on the EU market. There are various reasons why that regulatory system struggles. Notified body capacity is possibly one of those reasons. I wanted to ask Jeffrey, can you give an idea to the audience of how long a conformity assessment takes for an AI-based medical device today? How much does it cost for a manufacturer? Maybe also, how many people in a notified body are actually involved when you need to do the conformity assessment of one device? And yeah, what are potential impacts from the AI Act on that? And of course, the obvious question, notified bodies, do they have the capacity to do conformity assessments under the AI Act?
Thank you, Koen. That's a very big question actually to ask. So I think we're still going through the implementation of MDR. So we're looking at a amount of devices that we need to basically get through to get back to the system that we had under NDD. So there's a lot of certifications that need to be done within that framework. Today, I think there's about 20,000 that we sort of need to get to maintain status quo. After that, you see that in today's world, we have about 3,000 and a bit. Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm a bit far apparently. You have about 3,000 and a bit that went through, which means there's still a big chunk of work to do. Now, if we look at AI, which is the question a bit more related to today, what we think today is that we have about a 5% of those certificates that are going to be related to AI. Why do we think that, or at least why do I think we see that, is because just before we went from MDD to MDR, there was a big peak in the approval of class 1 medical devices with an AI component. So that is basically what we see coming towards us over the next period. The other question, which relates to how long does it take, that's a very difficult question to ask, because that really depends on the risk classification, and it depends on how good the file is. It can be somewhere from 9 months to, in the worst cases, a few years, even if the file is really bad. I think on average, I think we get them through in about 18 months. I don't know what your experience is, but that's...
Yeah, and very important. So we're seeing similar timeframes, but what Jeffrey is talking about is, of course, the time we need from the first try of the manufacturer until it's finalized. So yeah, the net review time, how much do we spend as a notified body on the file, is much less. Yeah. Let's have something take like 50 hours or 60 hours. That's something which could be true. And I just wanted to add, if a product has AI on top of all the other things which are in the product, so I would probably say, Jeffrey, correct me if I'm wrong, that's something like 4 or 8 hours plus, which you probably might need to spend for AI to fill our internal checklist, to check all the check items we have to do. It's not more than that. So we are facing other things like clinical data and all those things which have to be right for medical devices as well. So AI is honestly just a piece of that entire conformity test assessment process, which has some importance, yes, but there are other ones as well.
So I retain something around 9 months to several years, depending a bit on the maturity. And that is probably going to be a peak, I guess you could say, when the AI comes into force again on the demand for notified bodies. Could you give the audience an idea of how much it costs for a manufacturer to do such a conformity assessment, just notified body costs?
Yeah, that's a very, again, very difficult question to reply. But I would say that if you have a good file as a manufacturer and everything is hunky-dory, then if you would come to us, then it probably would cost somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 euros, in my view, to get your certification. Of course, if your file is not good, then you get several. Yeah, cannot get closer. There's a thing on the floor here. So I was saying that if your file is really not good, you get into cycles of reviews, and each of those reviews take additional time and will cost additional money. So that's I think what we see. What I find quite interesting also on this in this forum is that we've looked at investments and all of that in previous talks, and what I think is also important, that what will change with AI-based medical devices is that there will be a difference between what you invest in your development and your rollout and what you invest in your actual certification, as opposed to more standard medical devices that we have on the market. So it might be a different impact on the financials of such companies that needs to be taken into account.
We heard Andreas say that there's such a thing as sampling in the medical device legislation. So not every tech file of an AI-based device is assessed, only a selection. AI Act doesn't refer to sampling. AI Act follow the conformity assessment procedure under the sectorial legislation, at least for products, AI systems subject to Annex 2, List A. What are the implications? Imagine that sampling is not possible because it's not part of the Act. What does that imply for notified body capacity? Do you have a feeling of what that could mean?
I think we probably would rather say give the same answer to that one. I hope that this will not happen. So if we're running into that situation that we don't have any sampling anymore, it would mean that we have to assess a lot more files, which is bringing down our capacity. So our capacity is limited, and if we have to assess each and every file, it will basically stop us from assessing other files. That's true and cannot be discussed away. So we have to be very careful on that one as well.
Thank you. That's very clear. One thing that the Act mentions is that notified bodies, when they're not satisfied with the testing evidence provided by the manufacturer, that they should directly carry out the tests needed to, I guess, supplement that testing evidence. That's something that we currently don't do for AI-based medical devices today. Can you reflect on what the implications are for notified bodies to be able to do such testing? When would they, for example, not be satisfied with the testing? And how would they approach that? Maybe, Andreas, you can...
Yeah, that's a very complicated question, because I honestly don't know why that requirement came into the draft of the Act. I think it might be quite challenging for a notified body to test each and every device containing artificial intelligence on their own, because we don't have the capabilities to do that on our own. So I think we probably, if this is a requirement and we stick to that requirement, we probably have to look some kind of smarter approaches, saying what we call, for example, a witness testing, that we go to the manufacturer and observe what they do, because they have all the test equipment being in-house. And so we sit next to them saying, okay, please show me that test case. Why is that outcome like this? And we are discussing those kind of things. So taking a device, testing it on our own could be very hard, actually.
Do you have other thoughts on this, Jeffrey?
I think I fully agree. I have to get a bit closer. I think I fully agree to what's being said, and you can try to set up collaborations with external labs to do so. But I think, in all honesty, we are not ready to take on that testing in-house. And it will also, I think, pose a risk to companies who are expecting us to do that, because it might actually lead to a situation where those companies will not find notified bodies because we are not in a position to perform such testing at the moment.
So I hear witness testing as a possible solution, where you look over the shoulders of the manufacturer doing the testing, or another test lab maybe. Of course, when testing is not adequate, it's usually because the manufacturer simply doesn't have enough data to reach a statistical significance. If the manufacturer doesn't have it, where is it going to come from? That's, I guess, do you guys have it? I doubt it.
No, in this particular case, you can then actually ask if they have a product. But
yeah, good point. So testing capacity is something to reflect on. Are there other aspects that you think notified bodies, and I think this is for you, Jeffrey, are there other aspects that notified bodies could do to make sure that the capacity is there? What sort of considerations should they take into account? And I understood that other than being the head of the notified body SGS, you also lead a project to increase the notified body capacity. What considerations, what is that group working on?
Well, what you're now talking about is, I think, the NoboCup project, which was launched earlier this year. I'm actually not the leader of the project. We are a participant, but we were one of the people, or one of the participants that really contributed to it. It's actually a consortium that's comprised out of mainly universities and industry networks, and we are focusing on education. So out of the 6 work packages where you always have the 2 normal ones that deal with management and dissemination, there are 2 that really are focusing on education. And it is really about education of market operators and also getting expertise inside notified bodies. And we don't do that basically for us, we do that for the whole network. That's what the project is focusing on. So we have in development a series of trainings that will help manufacturers improve their files and also create some sort of pathway of interest to get people towards notified bodies, because I think Andreas can also vouch that it's not easy to find people with the right backgrounds. So we try to create a path for that. Second is we would also like to improve the knowledge within the notified bodies by having our people trained not on the legislation or the regulation aspects, but really on basic technologies that are the future within Europe and coming our direction. That's what we basically are focusing on with these training platforms today.
Sounds like we could use one of those 50 specialists on large language models also with notified bodies. A question for Andreas. Today, under the medical device legislation, the vast majority of manufacturers of AI-based medical devices, they use the full quality assurance, so they come and inspect or audit your quality system, in combination with, for the lower classes 2A, the examination of the technical file, for the higher classes, the design examination. Now, there's also the possibility under the medical device regulation, rarely used, but possible, that manufacturers opt for other conformity assessment procedures, such as, for example, assessing what we call an EC type examination, assessing a batch of medical devices, and then rather than audit the full quality system, just audit the production process. The AI Act, however, requires full quality assurance and what equates to, in my view, design examination and even testing of the product. So what are the implications for those manufacturers that did not choose, and for the notified bodies that are not using that full quality system assurance and design examination or tech file examination, if they make the switch to the AI Act?
Yeah, honestly, I think I don't see a real problem in this one, because I said earlier that most of the manufacturers which we all currently have are using the full quality management system anyhow. And actually, we also stimulate, especially the ones having software in their medical devices, and I assume AI must come along with some kind of software. We stimulate, you have to have a quality management system anyhow, because there are other standards in the medical device industry, especially for software, which require you to have a quality management system, so it doesn't work without. So for those, let's say, 2 to 3% who might bump into that problem, well, I don't know whether we want to stop the entire, or whether this should really be hindering us from moving forward. I don't see a real issue with that specific case, honestly. I don't know, Jeffrey, whether you agree or...
I think I agree. I was just wondering what a batch of AI products would be.
Yeah, good question. I doubt. And the production system, what is a production system? Pressing the button.
So I think
not much to audit there.
Product mostly. Yeah.
As a final question before we open the questions to the room, and I guess I could ask the question to both of you, starting maybe with Jeffrey. What are your concerns and your hopes with the AI Act in view of the work that you do within SGS and NoboCup?
Well, I think it relates to what Andreas has already said. It's really getting a structure in how these different regulations and legislations are communicating with each other, because in the end, I think we are responsible for the patient safety mainly. So I think MDR and IVDR should be the drivers in this. And I think based on that, it would also be important to get all the guidelines set up for us to deal with it. And the other point, and I think you might also second that, I don't know, is about getting people with that knowledge inside notified bodies and finding them, because it's not a big group to fish for, let's say.
And we all need them. So the manufacturers need them, and we need them as well. So absolutely right. So nothing to add, actually.
Yeah, we're fishing in the same pond, indeed. Are there questions in the room? If so, please state your name and affiliation. Raise your hand, maybe.
Hello, my name is Patrick Reichmann. I'm here for Dedalus Healthcare, representing medical device industry. I have one question regarding the notified body capacity. We're speaking about medical devices, and we have much more domains in the room. So I think we will have to look at much more notified bodies in future. Looking back at how long your designation process has taken for the medical device notified bodies, how could we improve this for AI notified bodies?
A complicated question to ask to us, of course. Let's say it in that way. I don't know how much flexibility we can, or we or us, can build into the AI Act to rather the fact that it's a horizontal standard to make it as vertical as possible. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but of course we hope that the additional burden we have as an existing notified body for medical devices to lower it as much as possible. So we have to talk about training, we have to talk about testing modules, whatever you have, but let's say waiting another year until you're designated and going through the entire process again might be something we would like to avoid if possible.
Yeah, fully agree.
Okay.
Thank you so much to the gentleman on the panel, Tobias Schreik, Siemens Healthineers Medical Device Industry. I would have a question to the group. When we see the MDR and the AI Act, we see that they are in spirit similar frameworks. Nevertheless, we see, based on the discussions ongoing, that a short discrepancy, or let's say pitch between the two legislative framework ask for consolidation of the requirements. I would pose the question on your personal estimation whether or not you see that this framework, this stacked framework, adds a hindering to the position of being an innovative Europe, and whether it would push manufacturers to go for primary certification in other markets first.
I think the latter question you probably have to ask a manufacturer, but do you care to comment?
I think we can try. I think I already tried to set it in different words, but if we don't solve the traps which I mentioned, we are bumping into that situation, yes. No doubt. So if we're making it overcomplicated, we are behind again, and this might happen exactly what you described.
Clear words, thank you.
Anybody else? Last chance? No, thank you so much. I wish to. There's one more. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the event. My question is on notified bodies' participation in sandboxes. The final compromise from 25th September did not include an article where basically it says notified bodies can participate in the sandboxes. So what do you think about that?
So will they participate? Are they interested in participating? What's their incentives to participate? I guess that's the questions.
I can talk for us, but not for all the others, of course. I mean, maybe you, I don't know. In principle, we would be interested in that, yeah. And we are also involved, not involved as a partner, but as an advisor in another EU project, which is called Realm, that is actually dealing with some of these aspects. But that's purely as an advisory role. And they do organize sandboxes, or they are about to do so. on how to get AI, because it's really AI in healthcare on how to deal with that. So we are just an advisor in that one. So we would like to do it. I don't know whether.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think there's no.
Actually, we do it.
Yeah, we didn't get that. Thank you. At the end of the session, we figured it out. So, yeah, let's go to the closing remarks. I wish to thank the panel for this fruitful discussion. I see that there's issues, but also possibilities to resolve them. Please give a hand of applause, and we'll go to the opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this additional attention. Please. So I can start. Okay, perfect. Thanks. Well, once again, thank you for this discussion, this vivid discussion. It proves that, and it's so evident that AI is simply not a technology, at least for sure not a technology for all of you, but it's a transformative force that has the potential to shape our future in many profound ways. As we bring this event to a close, it's again more than evident that we stand at the crossroads of opportunities on one hand and challenges on the other. And Europe has the potential to lead in AI innovation, but we must do so while upholding our core values and of fairness and equity. We must ensure that AI serves as a force for good, leaving no room for discrimination or the concentration of power. So I urge each of you to continue their vital conversation, both within your organizations and in public arena. Together we can forge a path forward that harnesses the transformative power of AI for the betterment of our societies, ensuring that is a tool that reflects our common values and creates more inclusive future. So thank you once again for your participation, for the active participation, and look forward to continued collaboration in our shared pursuit of a Europe where AI is a force and definitely a positive change. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. And I have now the task to thank on behalf of my fellow organizers here at Digital Europe and Cecilia and MedTech Europe, as well as Sesimo. On behalf of COSIR, thank you very much to our wonderful hosts, Mrs. Hahn, who is still here, thank you very much, Mr. Lagodinsky, Mrs. Maidel, and Mr. Vitanov. That was an excellent collaboration. We wish to thank your offices. It was a wonderful collaboration and for making this happen. As concluding remarks, I have 4 aspects to mention to summarize what has been discussed in the previous 3 sessions. The AI Act comes at a time, and that's the first point, of increasing technological changes and opportunities. So for Europe, it's really a chance to uphold its technological prominence. And we should provide citizens with access to safe and groundbreaking applications. And this means for us as representatives of digital solutions manufacturers that we have a responsibility towards the end users. We have the responsibility to place safe and performing products on the European market, and in particular for COSIR, as well as also for MedTech Europe. This is of key importance because we put patient safety at the center of our activities. We recognize, and that's the second point, the importance that has been discussed in your panel with Sesimo, Gabriele. We do recognize the importance of ethical aspects related to AI. So, for instance, on the one hand, We have increasing AI deployment, which may raise concerns for surveillance, and you heavily discussed this, for worker safety, for hiring practices and reduction of jobs. But it also opens at the same time a lot of opportunities. And you mentioned quite a few of them, because we may save economic and environmental costs, we may reduce waste, and improve health conditions of operators. And therefore, it is essential to have a robust regulatory framework that provides certainty to all actors. That leads to my third point. In this context, we need clarification for the implementation of the legislation. And in the first panel, Cecilia, you discussed the regulatory sandboxes as a good tool to enable guidance for businesses with risk categorization, conformity processes, etc., but also one-stop shops that can help companies and redirect them to competent sectorial authorities enabled with sufficient resources. And that was heavily discussed in the last panel, the sufficient resources. Leading to the last point, it is fundamental to ensure that we align legislation, which was just discussed again in the last panel. The AI Act must not duplicate or conflict with already existing sectorial legislation. The diverging and contradicting requirements would not only endanger the functioning of highly and well-regulated sectors, such as our medical device sector, but also create additional burdens on certification and bodies. So in conclusion, the AI Act must channel, support, and drive AI innovation. This is a key element to bring new and innovative products on the European market, and together we can achieve remarkable progress in AI, and I'm confident that this event will help in achieving this goal. We're looking forward to a next time to discuss where we stand, and I do thank you for your attendance, commitment, participation online as well as here in the room, and the meeting is adjourned, and have a very good evening. Goodbye.